of an unnamed security source reported in the press this month. And the police claim that several terrorist plots have been foiled since the London bombings last year. But following that raid in the East End and the shooting of an innocent man, unease has been growing in some areas of the Muslim community about the strategy of the security services. In the crossfire this morning, Tactics and the Terrorist Threat. With me are the journalist and commentator Melanie Phillips. Her book, Londonistan, is out this week, and also Asghar Bukhari from the lobby group, the Muslim Public Affairs Committee. Melanie Phillips, I can start with you. Your subtitle of your book, indeed, is How Britain is Creating a Terror State Within. Basically, you think we've been too generous a haven to particularly Muslims?
Well, it's not to Muslims, to Islamic terrorists and extremists. It's an extraordinary fact that during the 1990s, Britain became, in the view of many intelligence services, the most important centre in Europe for Al-Qaeda. And we did that by simply turning a blind eye to the fact that after the war in Afghanistan, a whole lot of jihadis poured into London because Britain afforded them the most hospitable reception in the world. And this was despite the fact that country after country was begging and pleading our establishment to do something about this, and we took absolutely no notice. And it's the contention of my book, Londonistan, that not only did we allow that to happen then, but even now, even after 9/11, even after the London bombings last year, although we've clearly woken up to the fact there is a significant terrorist threat, in my view, both the political and the security establishment still hasn't grasped the nettle, because it's still denying in very important respects what this terrorist threat is actually fueled by.
Asghar Bukhari, do you actually believe that there is sort of 1,200 active Islamic terrorist bases?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's an unnamed source. You know, we can't verify anything. What surprises me is that I'm going through the book now, and it seems that Melanie just seems to tar Muslims in general. I know she's making it very specific now, not Muslims, but just this fringe group of jihadists, as she calls it, you know. But the way the book goes, it's almost like all Muslims are potential jihadists. Islam is the root cause of all evil in the world today, and basically the West must face up to it, which, you know, is almost a kind of parallel of al-Muhajirun, kind of extreme kind of Muslim group. You know, it's on the right side of that.
Well, are all Muslims potential jihadists?
Of course not, and I'm afraid Ashok is completely misrepresenting the book over and over again. I must make this point clear, because it's a terribly important point that this has to be got right. I'm making the point that I'm not saying anything about Islam, and I say over and over again that the majority of British Muslims and countless thousands and millions of Muslims across the world would have nothing to do with the extremism and terrorism perpetrated in the name of their faith. However, the numbers in this country who do subscribe to extremist views and terrorist views, according to all the sources we have from the government, security forces and so on, is unacceptable.
So you don't believe that an interpretation of Islam or the principles of Islam are somehow counter to Judeo-Christian principles of liberty?
Well, an interpretation of Islam, certainly. This is the crucial point that has just been missed. I'm not saying anything about Islam per se. There are many Muslims who draw entirely legitimate spiritual succor from Islam.
But at the root,
there is an
believe...
interpretation of Islam grounded in Islamic doctrine, upheld and even mandated by very senior Islamic religious and spiritual leaders across the world, which holds Muslims to the task, as they would see it, of perpetrating holy war against unbelievers. And that is what lies behind the terrorist jihad. And what I'm saying in the book, Londonistan, that is, unless our security and political establishment accept that fact, that the terrorism that we face is grounded in an interpretation of religion, we can't understand the threat, and if we can't understand it, we can't defeat it.
Is Al-Qaeda or Islamic terrorism grounded in Islam?
The root cause of all Muslim terrorism is foreign policy, something that is lost on Melanie Phillips. You know, yes, she seems quite reasonable now, but anyone who's, you know, potentially going to buy the book will soon start to realise that it's hysterical. You know, it really blurs the line between the average...
So you're saying the root cause is foreign policy?
There's no doubt in my mind. I'm a Muslim, I know.
So what? What exactly in foreign policy?
Well, I mean, when you're oppressed, at the end of the day, you're going to resist that oppression. Thus, some form of resistance will turn into terrorism.
So what oppression was 9/11 resisting?
Well, Osama bin Laden himself says that he got the idea of 9/11 from Israel going into Lebanon.
So
it's himself.
Foreign policies.
Well, I think this is, again, nonsense. There is no doubt that foreign policy initiatives such as the war in Iraq, such as foreign conflicts, Israel, Palestine, Kashmir, Chechnya, these are all used as recruiting sergeants for terror because they're used to inflame the paranoia and to inflame the grievance against the West that is fueling the jihad. But if you read all what the jihadis say, Al-Qaeda people say, the fatwas and so on, it is entirely clear, and also the sources, the Islamic sources they've drawn, the root cause of this is the belief that A, the West is engaged in a conspiracy to destroy Islam, which is untrue, it is paranoia, and secondly, that there is a duty to reimpose the medieval Islamic caliphate.
It's just not credible. I'm sorry, you're just not. Nothing you say is credible anymore. You're not a Muslim, and the way you're at, you're almost like the expert on Islam now. Don't tell us why we're angry. We're angry due to foreign policy. Religion says stand up against oppression.
But just,
so yes, there is a religious element standing up against oppression.
But this really is the question. Just as one would argue that people who are not Muslims are entitled to have views as to what they think.
Oh yes, extremist views, yeah.
Or you indeed are entitled to have views about foreign policy.
That's right.
I mean, the issue is whether, if you are what you would interpret as a true believer in Islam, someone who follows the Quran, whether you can accept a liberal society in which people behave in a very, very different way from you.
I am a true believer in Islam. I accept it. I love it. The fact that the problem is that people like Melanie Phillips can't understand that. To them, no, possibly deep down somewhere, the Muslims don't accept it and we can't live with it, and it's just a secret waiting to come out and overtake the West. This is just a bogeyman.
If you're in the West, I mean, here's your website, it says Muslims are made to feel as if Britain has done them a great favour by allowing them to live here. You point out many are born here. You say they have a right to be heard. What does that right to be heard mean? Does it mean, for example, that the government shouldn't go to war in Iraq?
Yes, we're citizens, aren't we?
Even if the majority are in favour of that.
Well, how do you know the majority are in favour? And 2 million people march. I didn't see 2 million people march saying, let's go to war. So my argument is...
The adult population is over 30 million, I think.
I'm sorry?
The adult population is over 30 million.
Yes, but you're
assuming...
It's
a minority who marched. That's my point.
No, but when a marching is a physical act, it demonstrates that you're actually willing to do something. If they were so in favour of war, why wasn't there a counter-march of 10 million people? I would argue that the majority were against it, and we are Muslims, and we have the right...
Parliament voted for it, the Democratic Parliament voted for it.
Correct, but if you want to look at, you know, scratches...
No, but what I'm saying is, at what point does the right to have a voice heard become the right to drown out other people's voices?
A very good question. There's never an excuse to drown out other people's voices, and it's sadly the fact that I think the problem is that it's drowning out the Muslim voice. Anytime a Muslim speaks up, if he speaks up for, against Israel, then he's an extremist. If he speaks up against foreign policy, oh, he's a fanatic. You know, drown him out.
Well, if you accept your diagnosis, what should be done about it?
Well, I have various proposals in my book, but I think one has to, first of all, face the fact that this terrorism that we face is grounded in religion. As I say, we can't defeat it unless we understand.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.